Okay, so let's get into the meat of this thing. And what was the most surprising result, or what's the most surprising thing for you heading into week 2 of the season?
Okay, so where do I? There's a lot. I would say, okay, so nationally, it was probably the Colts and how good Daniel Jones looked. And being in New York, a lot of Giants fans, I think, are rooting for him, but also realize that it didn't work out the way they had hoped for 5 years. I was in Indianapolis with him 2 weeks ago, and sat down for about 35 minutes. And I've known him since his rookie year quite well, and it was the most relaxed I had seen him and felt he had been, the most confident, certainly. And we had these conversations during his tenure in New York about what went wrong, how could he fix it. And I think for the first time, he has a head coach that really believes in him and is going to cater his offense toward him, and Shane Steichen, who obviously did a lot for Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia and now has been in Indianapolis the last 2 years. And I'm not going to give a shot at Brian Daboll, but I am going to say that you already saw the difference, not only in scheme, but look at the offensive line. I don't know if Russell Wilson could have played any worse, 17 to 37, 168 yards, but he wasn't protected at all. And Daniel had that same issue throughout his tenure in New York. He goes to Indianapolis, good offensive line. He plays great. They actually set a record. They scored on all 7 possessions.
7
That's
drives,
never happened. He had 3 touchdowns total, obviously really connected with Tyler Warren, their rookie. I just was so impressed with them. I also think Miami is in for a rude awakening this year. Well, that team was totally unprepared. Actually, that was the most unprepared team in week 1.
Yeah, well, let's get into that in a second. But it's funny, we mentioned that here on our show about Daniel Jones going 7 for 7. And people are like, oh, you're saying he's the greatest. No, we're just saying that he did this unusual thing. All right? No, it's crazy how people can take a data point. Like,
of course.
They scored on every single drive.
Right.
You know, that hadn't happened in the regular season since 1991. It wasn't something that happened. And people are like, you're comparing him to Josh Allen. No, we're just saying these other quarterbacks didn't do it. We're not saying he's going to do it every week. We're just saying you need to understand what an outlier performance this was. And people's heads tend to explode when you try and put things in a rational perspective.
It's so true. I'm actually curious, just was the pushback generally, Daniel Jones still stinks and you're giving him so much credit for a great week 1 and he's not going to be doing this the whole season? And that's essentially what everyone said.
Yeah, and I'm like, we're not saying he's doing it. We're saying, look how good he was this week 1, and we'll see what happens going forward. And I mentioned some of these other, and they're like, well, Josh Allen did it in the playoffs against the Patriots. I'm like, well, first of all, there are 2 sets of records in the NFL. Everyone needs to know this. There's regular season records and there's playoff records. The NFL separates them. And oh, by the way, in that playoff game in which Josh Allen did lead them to 7 scoring drives, there was a kneel down. Whether you like it or not, that counts as a drive. That counts as a drive in the NFL. So, yes, he had 7 scores, but it's not the same as what Daniel Jones did here. They scored on every single possession. Yeah. And people acting as if I said Josh Allen is now 4'3" and will never throw another touchdown pass. It's like, guys, take a breath. We're just trying to show you what happened here. All right, you mentioned Miami.
Go ahead. No,
you go ahead.
I was just going to say, to that point, another like on the flip side, Detroit, they, as good as Indianapolis looked, Detroit looked anemic offensively. And I think part of that is Green Bay. I think that defense is going to be really good. They're on the road. But also, not only do they lose Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, but they lose a whole host of other coaches, including J.T. Barrett, his quarterback coach who goes to Chicago. One of their top coaches goes to New England. They lost their Pro Bowl center, Zeitler. There was a lot of turnover in Detroit. And to me, like, they'll figure that out. That's another camp I had the good fortune of going to, and everyone kept saying how much better Jared Goff has gotten. We did not see that in week 1, but Trey, I'd be remiss and I think fully mistaken if I said Detroit's not going to figure it out. Maybe it's not right away, but that team is too good.
Yeah, you look at Jared Goff's numbers without Sean McVay and without Ben Johnson. It is
19-1, I think.
Yeah, they have to figure that out, and they've got an interesting one with the Bears coming in. We'll get to that in a minute. But you mentioned Miami. I'm with you. I think that, look, we used to do this thing every Monday on NFL Live called Overreaction Monday, especially week 1. You see something week 1, you're like, oh, that's it. This is going to be this. Yeah. And it almost never works out that way. Okay, but I think there are enough signs going into week 1 about real trouble in Miami. To your point, they look completely overmatched. They look completely overpowered. And there were rumblings about this all summer. Remember, Tua was asked about Tyreek Hill and his relationship. Well, we're still a work in progress. It's year 3. If you haven't figured out heading into year 3, there are much bigger issues that we need to discuss. And then there are the Tyreek Hill issues. So I think I don't think it's a stretch to say that if Miami finds a way to lose to New England, a game in which, with the Miami Dolphins, with Tua under center, they have never lost to the New England Patriots. 7-0. Wow. 7-0. If they find a way to lay an egg against a New England team, which I like Mike Vrabel, they still have a lot of limitations, it might be curtains very early for Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack with the Dolphins. The offensive line was really bad, and Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, the GM and head coach, I think that was the combination that surprised me the most in terms of GM head coach that kept their job. I felt like between the Giants and the Dolphins, both of those, it was very close, and ultimately they get another opportunity, another year. To go into week 1 and be that unprepared is shocking. And I don't think anybody expected the Colts to be a juggernaut. They really were dominated in all 3 facets. They didn't get Jalen Waddle involved the whole game. They didn't get Tyreek Hill involved. Tua had turnovers that we haven't seen from him in a few years. And, again, he wasn't protected. So it was shocking to me when Mike McDaniel's supposed to be this offensive guru, this wonderkind, but it's more about leadership or lack thereof. I see a lack of leadership from the head coach to the players. And that doesn't mean they're not going to figure it out and win some games, but it does mean that you could not have been more unimpressed with the team than you were with the Dolphins in week 1. And to your point about curtains, so I asked Draymond about this this week because he's friendly with Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins. And he did say that Steve Ross is not someone to pull the plug early. And a lot of fans would say, well, it's not early. But it is obviously week 2 now. And my thought would be, heading into the clubhouse, Mike McDaniel was the first candidate to be fired this season.
No question. No question.
But if they lose to New England, do I think he's fired? No. But that performance that will not be tolerated at that level.
Yeah, well, it can't be more than anything else.
And New England wasn't very good week 1, by the way.
No, Geno Smith lit him up for a franchise record. I mean, Geno Smith let him up for a franchise record passing yard. So that tells you how uneven, for a lack of a better term, that New England was week 1. All right, let's get into some other things here. Obviously, things did not go the way the Chiefs wanted it. Although, if Chris Jones maybe contains, they have a chance to do the things that the Chiefs always do, give Patrick Mahomes the ball last back and come away with a win. I can't believe they gave up a 19-yard scramble on a 3rd and 14 with the game on the line. But this is a very interesting week for the Kansas City Chiefs. They come in now with the defending Super Bowl champs, Philadelphia, coming to Arrowhead this weekend. They were beat up, just pummeled on the offensive line and defensive line, the line of scrimmage in the Super Bowl, 40-22. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have never started 0-2. I don't think they've even ever been 2 games under 500 in the Patrick Mahomes era. And he's looking to avoid a 3rd straight loss if you go back to the Super Bowl. That's never happened. I'm not giving up on the Chiefs, but it does feel like this is kind of a big week for them.
It's a big week. They're also not favored. They're an underdog at home
for the first
Arrowhead,
time,
which I think that's the first time with Mahomes that's happened. And I had to look at that twice because I couldn't believe it. I know it's Philadelphia. I know that the Eagles are defending champs and obviously beat up KC pretty good in the Super Bowl. But I have learned not to bet against an angry Mahomes. To me, an angry Mahomes is the equivalent of like an angry Kobe, where Kobe might have gone 8 for 30 and had a really bad night. And then there was the video of him staying in the arena shooting 300 threes after the game. I don't think Mahomes stayed in Sao Paulo to throw, but I guarantee you this, he is not going to have a bad performance. Now, he was good in the second half, but the first half was not the Chiefs' offense we've come to love.
Worthy was knocked out 3 plays in, and he was such a huge part of their game plan.
I was going to say, I think the Xavier Worthy injury was catastrophic because he was going to be so game planned into that matchup against the Chargers. They really love him. Like, he is a bona fide weapon. He's not just a gadget guy as we saw in the Super Bowl. Obviously, no Rashee Rice for 6 games. He is really going to be the guy. Another. I'll just give you a name to really watch for that maybe a lot of fans haven't heard yet. Mid-round pick, rookie out of Utah State, Jalen Royals. He's been banged up, Royals. But he's going to be that yak guy. And then Worthy, obviously, is the home run target. And then you saw what Kelsey could still do. But Worthy practicing this week, he separates the shoulder. He is, even if he's just on the field, that creates a weapon that you have to account for. To me, this is a get-right game for Kansas City. I'm sure Philadelphia has a lot of things they'd like to fix after giving up some points to Dallas. But the Chiefs being a home dog at Arrowhead week 2 with, to your point, the opportunity to lose 3 straight with Mahomes feels like an almost impossible task.
Well, it has been impossible. Just so we're clear, I mean, these are the statistics, and this is what we do on this show. We give you the facts. We're not going to argue with you. We're not going to yell you about our opinions or our feelings, okay? The most consecutive starts to begin a career without a 3-game losing streak since 1950. And by the way, the NFL always goes back to 1950 because that's when they start keeping information. Okay,
right. They didn't have the ability.
Yeah. When the Steagles were playing in the 40s, they didn't do this kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So when they say 1950, they're telling you we have never seen this. So including playoffs, he's gotten 134 straight starts to begin a career and has never had a 3-game losing streak. No other quarterback in the history of the NFL has done that. So I do think that this game may surprise some people. They're a little angry. They're a little embarrassed.
They're definitely angry.
It would not shock me at all if they came away with a win Sunday when they're at home. And Andy Reid's record, by the way, with extra, even though it's a Friday, I know the Eagles have it too, his record with extra time to prepare is the best in football.
Yeah. And this is that mini bye, if you will.
Yeah. You're exactly right.
I did ask A.J. Brown, who was held to 1 catch, which for him is
one target.
Yeah, I asked him this week on my show. I said, "What happened?" Because obviously you weren't expecting that, and his answer I thought was interesting. Was they rolled so much zone at him, and he said, I saw all the stuff on the internet about I didn't get separation. He says there's no opportunity to get separation against zone, and he said just watch out for week 2 against the Chiefs. So I'm really excited to see him. I'm really excited to see an angry Mahomes. And to your point about Andy Reid coming off essentially a bye, it's pretty lethal.